Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode we're sailing out in the Tier 6 Russian cruiser known as the Budyonny in a Tier 7 standard battle on the map Estuary. The purpose of today's gameplay is to demonstrate the Budyonny and how effective it can be in a rather different role from what we're used to in our cruisers on this channel, and that is being the rearguard. In short, being the one ship, or perhaps one of a couple of ships, that decide to hold the team's flank while the rest of the team push in a given direction. And what we're going to see in this game will one of two ships that hold the western side of the map down as both teams make their way over towards the eastern side of the map. And as to why I think the Budyonny is good in this role, well, let's begin to articulate it as we make our way west. Firstly, the poor concealment of the ship works very well if you're trying to hold a position down in knowing what's coming. Reason being, we're detected at sea at 12.7 kilometers, which means any enemy destroyers that decide to charge across the western side using the superior concealment are going to spot us, and using our map knowledge and knowledge through playing this game, that tells us that it's got to be an enemy destroyer charging down this way. And of course, if we assume the worst, it's the most potent of the enemy destroyers in terms of torpedo range and damage, it will be the enemy Akatsuki, the Tier 7 Japanese destroyer. On top of that, we also have to consider that our gun range is very nice, whereby we have a 16.6 kilometer gun range and our three triple 152mm batteries are standard, and we can extend that to 19.9 kilometers thanks to the spotter plane consumable. More on that in a second. But another thing we're doing right now is using our poor armour to our advantage, whereby we want to bait enemy light cruisers that may charge down the western side of the map once we're detected, right on cue, and we know that's the enemy destroyer, we would assume it is. We want any enemy light cruisers that are charging down the western flank to take a pot shot at our broadside. We may take one citadel as we turn away because of our rather poor manoeuvrability, a 6.9 second rudder shift and a 710 meter turn circle radius, but if we can goad enemy ships to shoot at us, our teammates can fire back, especially our New Mexico behind us, or what would be off to our starboard side right now. So we can use our weaknesses to our advantage if needs be. Of course, if a battleship hit us with an armour piercing and scored a citadel on us, we'd lose at least a third of our health straight away, even though we do have a decent health pool, I suppose, of 30,800. But coming back to our guns, with our railgun-like trajectories, as a result we can put a lot of shells out in this enemy Colorado using our spotter plane throughout the 1.5 minute duration. And as we can see, whilst our accuracy of the spotter plane is quite poor at first, we're correcting, and with our 8-second reload as well, we can start to rain in some good hits. And it's worth pointing out here that we are using a combination of Demolition Expert and IFHE. IFHE increasing our chances of actually getting the penetrating high explosive shell, i.e. the first of the 4 ribbons demonstrated when you hit a target with the advanced ribbons on. And by increasing our damage output via the selection of captain skills, we're going to actually see that we pick up some nice damage salvos here. Such as, for example, a 2000 damage salvo there. Now outside this, what else are we considering right now? Well, we're not being detected, which means the enemy destroyer is heading down the very western edge of the map we were supposed to looking at the minimap. And that's why we're always having a look at the minimap whilst we're waiting for our shells to reload, as well as trying to correct our fire mentally on the fly. Combination of things, but if we can pull them off together it's going to help, and that salvo there did approximately 4,000 damage to the enemy Colorado alone as it bumped into its friendly Fiji. Our spotter plane's coming to the end, and with the Colorado here starting to turn in behind a landmass and we're losing the angle and the ability to see them, it seems as though our team's spotting aircraft, or indeed our carrier's aircraft, are no longer spotting the Colorado. It's perfect timing, what with our spotter plane coming to its end. But in the meantime, a smoke screen has appeared in front of us, we saw that a little bit earlier on, and that is going to be the enemy T-22. And we're turning bowing towards it just in case the T-22 uses its 7.5 kilometer torpedoes against us. We're assuming it's one of the worst case scenarios. We can't always guarantee it. But all of the enemy destroyers would be able to reach us at this point, and the T-22 would actually be the best case scenario, where the enemy team was having a Leningrad. But regardless, by getting ready for enemy torpedoes and the T-22 being spotted out of their smoke, it turns out that our friendly Mayhem is spotting them coming up on our starboard side behind the landmass. What this means is the enemy T-22 is in a pincer position and they've decided to go bow on towards our friendly Mayhem, which means we can shred them with our high explosive as we bring in our X-gun as well and start to really cut into the T-22's health, dumping shell after shell into them. And with them on their dying breath at this point, our Mayhem comes in with their torpedoes and secures the kill. So with that enemy destroyer gone, we now decide, right, it's time to head out towards the southwest once again, as the enemy Colorado tries to squeeze a shell between the landmass off to our starboard side, dead centre of the map. But the Colorado's never going to get it, and in return we try to fire a cheeky salvo between two bits of landmass, aiming incorrectly, and I believe we're going to get some hits as a result, as the Colorado's still reloading. And indeed we even score a fire. Now why are we making our way out southwest at this point? Well, two things. The fact we're being detected right now and it's not a plane indicator tells us the enemy Akatsuki is out in the southwest corner of the map. Secondly, the enemy carrier seems to be focusing either us or our New Mexico. And we're slowing down a little bit here and then speeding back up to try and goad, perhaps, the carrier to aim at us. Alternatively, just as a precautionary measure against the enemy torpedoes. We're thinking about both circumstances on the fly. And it turns out that the enemy carrier is focusing the New Mexico. And our AA suite is alright, it's got 5 km maximum range. It's not as good as, say, a Cleveland's, your like-for-like American counterpart at your tier. But with the second set of dive bombers coming in, we decide to activate defensive fire to try and put them off the target and bring a couple of them down. We could have activated it for the first set of dive bombers as well, but we played it a little bit safe just in case that first set were a diversionary measure in order to make us use the consumable, something which I'm noticing more and more carrier players doing these days to try and offset the power of the defensive AA consumable. But the fact we're only being detected by aircraft at the moment tells us another thing. The Akatsuki is retreating along the western edge of the map. We did see a very faint glimmer of torpedoes whizzing past the New Mexico a couple of seconds ago, which means the Akatsuki's got to be off to that side if we're being spotted by aircraft alone. If they were further southwest, we would not have that aircraft against our indicator. And the fact we were priority targeted for a brief period of time could mean the enemy Akatsuki, but we don't need to read too much into it, due to their most likely positioning. But we'll keep changing up our direction every so often as we open fire on the enemy Leningrad here at just under 12 km distance, and we can see with our railgun-like arcs and our decent muzzle velocities, we as a result, even the most nimble of destroyers and even the thinnest of destroyers, thanks to our 137 metres of dispersion at 16.6 kilometres, we can hit these difficult targets very well. As the enemy Belfast opens fire and we turn away, and it looks as though the enemy Leningrad is coming to a stop to smoke up. But we've thrown in a good number of shells, they're on minimal health now, so they're only going to be 1 or 2 salvos away from death. In the meantime, we head towards our friendly New Mexico, taking a couple of hits from the enemy Belfast, but nothing major. And it does look as though the enemy team is starting to falter up on the eastern side of the map. Although it's all still in contention, and if anything, a number of our team are now drifting towards the centre to try and push through the middle. Our team are also aware of the fact that the enemy Akatsuki's down the western side, and our carrier is making their way over to spot them with some fighter squadrons. But in the meantime, I'm now thinking about something more important. Firstly, I'm thinking, how can I perhaps get the Akatsuki a little bit later on as they try to retreat? We can see they're pulling back. Perhaps trying to throw some more torpedoes out towards our New Mexico as they do that. But I'm also thinking about the enemy carrier. Not in terms of whether they'll target me, I'm not too bothered about that, but whether I can catch the carrier off guard. Now why am I thinking this? Well, if you were a carrier player in the most typical games, or at least from what I've witnessed, and your team's losing on the eastern side, where do you want to position yourself? You'll position yourself on the western side of the map, and most likely, in the case of this game, and unfortunately we can't see the Leningrad here, I'm not sure why that is folks, you're going to see a couple of replay glitches here. I swear to you I'm not cheating, this is the first time I've ever witnessed this myself. But coming back to our point, if you were the carrier player, you position yourself as far away from danger, alternatively behind a very nice landmass that hides you from said danger. And the fact we're detected here most likely indicates it's the Akatsuki, but then we become unspotted, so it confirms it's got to be the Akatsuki up on the northwestern side. So if I was trying to cut off the carrier, and if I wasn't a carrier myself, I would head to the northwestern corner of the map, or at least make my way along the A or B lines and be in roughly grid square positions, A4, B4, to try and get away from all the fighting and be able to rearm and send out my planes for more attack runs. We're using that thought process against the enemy carrier, as the enemy Akatsuki is spotted here, but you're not going to see that for a little bit, which is unfortunate. We're starting to make our way up the 4 line and we're charging northwards. And in doing so, that means we'll be in a prime position if the carrier is where we think it's going to be to rip them to pieces with our guns. And at the same time, we are cutting off the Akatsuki's line of retreat. But with the Akatsuki having phenomenal triple torpedo tubes, and it gets 3 of them, with good range, good velocity and high damage, we decide let's be safe here and turn in towards them, because they most likely are probably thinking, well, the Budyonny is going to sail on a straight path here because it seems to be wanting to charge towards me to cut me off. So as we turn in, shortly, we're hoping or expecting to see some torpedoes whiz past us. Although we are prepared, we've got our bow towards where the torpedoes would be coming from if they are aimed on target. And we'll only take, say, 1 rather than multiple. And sure enough, the torpedoes appear off to our starboard side, and if we had carried on going straight, we would have run into those most likely. Although our top speed of 35 knots may have got us past them, but why take the risk when you can play it safe? Now at this point we're heading towards a couple of small landmasses, and we're wondering, should we head between the 2 tightest ones, i.e. the 2 that are in our close proximity? Well, due to the size of this ship and its overall turning circle, no. Let's be smart about this. If we get sandwiched between those landmasses and we happen to bump into one of them, even if it is a case of bumping our ship into the ground under the water, we're not going to be moving very far. And there we go, there's confirmation from our friendly carrier spotting planes, that i.e. their fighters, that the enemy carrier is exactly where we thought it'd be, A4. And that means now the enemy carrier is in range, whilst the Akatsuki is still retreating. And we didn't cut them off completely, but we were able to get in a couple more hits and knock out their engine as they make their way towards their cap. And we fire into the landmass. That was a little bit of a poorly timed shot on my part. We can now prioritise the enemy Ranger, which has no cover and is completely out in the open to us and the rest of our team. They are perhaps sending some planes towards us, or perhaps towards our ships that are pushing up the middle, but regardless, it doesn't matter. We can tear apart this Ranger now and put them down and out of the game for good. Just throwing in salvo after salvo as we pick up some citadels with our high explosive here. We could switch to armour piercing, but we really wanted to score some fires to make sure the Ranger couldn't throw up any planes, or if they had the skill that enables them to do so when their deck's on fire at a much slower rate. And we can see the accuracy of our guns here, salvo after salvo just going in perfectly when it's aimed incorrectly, of course. You've always got that user error. Picking up another 2,000 damage there, and just throwing in shell after shell. In the meantime, we're also being wary of the fact we may have torpedoes coming in on our starboard side. But last time we saw the Akatsuki, they were heading towards the cap in a hurry, so they're probably not going to come back, and we're not being priority targeted, so as a result, that supports our theory that we're actually safe to sail as we are. And we finish off the enemy carrier for our first kill. A nice load of damage, a very potent threat out of the game, and now we make our way in towards the enemy cap circle. And with our ship speed, that means being quite a way away as we drifted away there is not a problem. We can very quickly get back in on the action. And with our gun range, without the need of our spotting aircraft even, we can fire at most targets. Even at the maximum of our range, we're never too far from the action. And that's a very nice thing about this ship, compared to say the likes of the Cleveland with its shorter range. As we make our way in, what are we considering right now? Well, the Akatsuki's got to be in that smoke screen, so we'll be ready for it, and they've sent all their torpedoes out towards our friendly Nagato, who's going to fall unfortunately. And as the Akatsuki takes a torpedo of its own from our Fiji, we see the enemy Belfast in a distance that's just completely stationary, using our torpedo indicator to indicate that. And with our torpedoes only having 4 kilometers range, we're not going to be using them for very much else in the ideal world, as we're seeing today, other than telling us whether ships are moving or not, and whether they're moving fast, slowly accelerating, decelerating, etc. Unfortunately, we missed with that salvo. We should have predicted that the Belfast would have moved after taking the first salvo. Silly error on our part, so we're not going to get the kill unfortunately, as they're wiped out by our friendly Fiji. And what you've noticed as well in the bottom left hand corner is that whenever we're engaging someone in open water, we're constantly changing up our speed, and you're going to notice that more now when we go head to head with the enemy Budyonny and the enemy Hood, the 2 battleships remaining on the enemy team. And that is to try and throw off the enemy's aim, i.e. if they compensate and aim in front of us, so we sail into their shot, or vice versa, if they aim on top of us, expecting us to slow down, we can speed up. And here we use our spotter plane to throw in some shells early on against the Budyonny, rather than waiting to get into range. Because if the battleship does prioritise us, we're very likely to take maximum damage even if we are hit on the bow, because the Budyonny is not a very well armoured ship. And now that we are being targeted by most likely the Budyonny, we need to start wiggling every so often. And notice how we're bringing in the X gun here before flicking back as fast as we can to avoid the incoming fire. We're trying to maximise our damage output. And the gun arc, or sorry I should say the aiming arc of the rear turret when you're aiming forward isn't too bad. You do have to expose a bit of broadside, but it's not going to get you ripped to pieces too often, especially at these longer ranges. But as the range is closing, you only want to using the bow guns. You're not going to want to bring about the X-type because of the risk it provides. As we can see here, closing and closing the distance, really the spotting plane is just as much an inconvenience as it is a convenience now, but making the best of it. The Budyonny misses another salvo-German dispersion on their guns working against them. We're continuing to close and we're sitting in our cap as well. I.e. the enemy's cap I should really say, but it'll be ours in the near future. And we're trying to get a fire on this bind as well. We want to sap a little bit more health out of them. Nothing so far, a little bit unfortunate. And we seem to be going down the broadside of them now. We could go charging in with our torpedoes as we pick up the Confederate achievement, but we're just hanging back instead, playing around with our speed to keep some distance. And with the enemy Bayern now looking to take on some torpedoes, and they're in fire in 2 locations as they absorb at least 1 torpedo from our friendly Fiji. We've thrown some armour piercing to try and get some extra damage out, but it doesn't look as though our armour piercing's aimed well enough to do so. We aim a little bit higher into the superstructure, that's a bit better, though we seem to be getting some over penetrations. And our armour piercing and fire combination will finish off the Bayern for our 2nd kill. We should have really stuck to high explosives there or aimed at the superstructure in the first place. And the enemy hood here aims all their shells towards us, but they're high explosive shells, so no actual damage. And we try to get the hood for the final kill of the match. Can we do it? Hopefully, just hopefully. Never mind, let's take a look at the post-game stats. A rather gentle victory in all. We can see that our battle performance consisted of 106,258 damage, made up of 158 target hits for our main battery, 4 enemy planes shot down, 8 incapacitations, 2 enemy ships destroyed, 10 fires set, and 6 citadel hits for our high explosive. And we also managed to pick up the heroic achievement of Confederate for damaging at least 6 enemy ships, whereby the damage caused to each ship must exceed 20% of their normal health pool. Looking at the team scores, we can see that we topped our team in terms of base experience earned, picking up 2,040, whereby our main contributions in this game were the following. Firstly, dealing a significant amount of damage to all 3 of the enemy's destroyers, in particular the T-22, but also the Akatsuki, which we tried to block off throughout the game. And secondly, the more important one, eviscerating the enemy carrier once we managed to catch up to it and lay it in our sights, not letting up until it finally sunk. Coming on to our detailed report, we only really have one item to note here, and that is the amount of damage we dealt with our main batteries with high explosive versus the amount of damage we did with resultant fires, whereby we dealt 79,586 base damage with our high explosive. This was approximately 4 times the amount of damage we did with our 10 fires. This goes to show how IFHE really worked in our favour here, using it on favourable guns for the skill, typically between 150 and 155mm in calibre, our guns being 152mm in calibre. It's a worthy captain skill pick for this ship. And finally, coming on to our credits and experience earned, we can see that after additions and deductions, we walked away with 183,048 silver credits and 3,060 Commander XP. To conclude, hopefully today we've demonstrated how the Budyonny makes her a very effective rearguard cruiser, whereby from the outset she can sit in the back and rain down a continuous stream of high explosive 152mm cannon fire thanks to the combination of her high range with and without the spotter plane and her railgun arcs, flat high velocity. But she's more than just that, whereby whilst we did supplement our damage output thanks to the IFHE captain skill, we also showed how when the time comes, the speed of this ship can be used to her advantage, whereby she can close off the retreating lines of enemy ships, in our case today enemy destroyers, and even catch the largest of enemy ships, the ones that thought they were safe on the edge of the map, by surprise. And today that was an enemy carrier. And as a result, regardless of where the Budyonny is on the battlefield, she's always within reach. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and fair seas.